Before we begin this audiobook, I'd like to share a few things with you. We're a new channel, and in future videos, we'll continue creating audiobook narrations like this. Based on your feedback, I'll gather input on which books and topics to cover next. Before we start the introduction, I want you to imagine this. There's a man sitting alone at a coffee shop. Everyone else is frantically scrolling through their phones, desperately seeking validation from strangers on the internet. The couples around him are taking selfies, trying 10 different angles, because anything less than perfect won't do for their Instagram stories. The groups are gossiping, talking behind each other's backs, making judgments about people who aren't even there. The lone wolves are swiping through dating apps like their lives depend on it, hoping that the next swipe right will finally fill the void they feel inside. But this man, he's got earbuds in, listening to an audiobook about philosophy. While everyone else numbs their minds with TikTok, he's sharpening his with thought. He's different. He's not lonely. He's not desperate. He's not seeking anything from anyone. And that, my friend, makes him the most dangerous person in that room. But why? Why does a man who's comfortable in his own skin, who doesn't need constant external validation, who can sit with his thoughts without needing to escape them, why does this terrify society? Hold that thought. We're about to dive deep into something that will change how you see solitude forever. The lie society tells you about being alone. Here's the brutal truth nobody wants to admit. Our entire social structure is built on your neediness. Think about it. Every advertisement you see, every social media platform you use, every dating app you download, every self-help guru you follow, they all operate on one fundamental assumption. You are incomplete without others. Find your soulmate. Connect with friends. Build your network. You need community to be happy. Isolation is the enemy. Loneliness is a disease. No man is an island. These aren't just suggestions. They're commandments. They're the unspoken rules that govern modern society. Break them, and you're labeled. Reject them, and you're problematic. Question them, and you're antisocial. But what if that's all lies? What if the man sitting alone, completely content with his own company, represents something so threatening to the social order that we've collectively agreed to label him as lonely, antisocial, or weird? Let me tell you something I've learned through years of observation and countless hours of solitude. Society doesn't fear the man who can't be alone. Society fears the man who doesn't need to be with anyone. There's a massive difference here that most people miss. The first type, the person who can't be alone, is everywhere. They're the ones who feel anxiety when their phone doesn't buzz for an hour. They're the ones who make plans every single night because an empty evening terrifies them. They're the ones who jump from relationship to relationship because being single feels like failure. They're the ones who say yes to every social invitation, even the ones they don't want to attend, because the alternative, staying home alone, feels like admitting defeat. Society loves these people. They're predictable. They're controllable. They're reliable consumers. They'll buy products to feel better. They'll seek validation through purchases. They'll stay distracted and compliant. They're perfect citizens in a system that requires constant consumption and conformity. But the second type, the person who doesn't need anyone, that's a different story entirely. This person has discovered something that threatens the very foundation of how we've structured modern life. They've found contentment within themselves. And contentment is the enemy of consumerism. Peace is the enemy of profit. Self-sufficiency is the enemy of control. Think about how much of our economy depends on people feeling inadequate. The beauty industry thrives on insecurity. The fashion industry runs on comparison. The tech industry profits from FOMO, fear of missing out. The entertainment industry banks on people needing distraction from their own thoughts. When you're content alone, you don't need most of what they're selling. You don't need the latest phone to feel connected. You don't need designer clothes to feel valuable. You don't need streaming services to avoid boredom. You don't need dating app subscriptions to feel complete. You become a bad customer. And in a world built on consumption, being a bad customer makes you dangerous. When philosophy becomes your armor, let me tell you about a man who understood this dangerous truth. His name was Arthur Schopenhauer, and he lived in 19th century Germany. Now, I'm not going to bore you with a history lesson, but Schopenhauer's life illustrates something crucial. He lived alone in Frankfurt. Never married, had a small social circle. Every morning, he'd wake at the same time, write, think, walk with his poodle, his only loyal companion. People thought he was strange. The academic world ostracized him. His contemporaries dismissed his work, but Schopenhauer didn't care. Why? Because he discovered something profound. The person who can be alone with their thoughts is the person who can think for themselves. And thinking for yourself, that's dangerous as hell. But this isn't just about some philosopher from centuries ago. This is about you. This is about every single day when you make a choice. Either you become part of the herd, or you forge your own path. See, most people never realize they have this choice. They sleepwalk through life, following the script they were handed at birth. Go to school, get a job, find a partner, buy a house, have kids, post about it all on social media, retire, die, and along the way make sure you're always connected, always social, always seeking approval from others. The dangerous loner has woken up from this script. They've realized it's optional. And once you realize the script is optional, you can't unsee it. You start questioning everything. Why do I believe this? Who benefits from me believing this? What would I believe if I had to start from scratch? This is where philosophy becomes armor. When you spend time alone, really alone, not distracted by screens or noise, you start having conversations with yourself. Deep conversations. Uncomfortable conversations. Conversations that most people avoid their entire lives. You ask yourself questions like, what do I actually want versus what I've been told to want? What are my real values versus the values I've inherited? Who am I when nobody's watching? What would I do if I didn't care what anyone thought? These questions are terrifying for most people, because the answers might reveal that they've been living someone else's life, that they've been chasing someone else's dreams, that they've been performing for an audience that doesn't even care. But for the dangerous loner, these questions are liberating. They strip away the bullshit. They reveal what's real. They show you who you actually are, beneath all the social conditioning and performance. And once you know who you are, really know yourself, other people's opinions lose their power over you. Their attempts to manipulate you become transparent. Their social games become boring. You become free. And freedom, my friend, is the most dangerous thing in the world to a system built on control. The psychology of the dangerous loner. Now, let's get real about what's actually happening inside the mind of someone who chooses solitude over social validation. First, they've broken free from the approval addiction. While everyone else is posting, liking, commenting, and seeking that dopamine hit from social media, this person has found something more powerful, self-respect, that doesn't depend on external metrics. Think about how addicted most people are to approval. They post a photo and immediately start checking how many likes it gets. They share an opinion and anxiously wait to see if people agree. They make a decision and immediately seek validation from friends and family. This is addiction, pure and simple. It's no different from checking your phone every 5 minutes for a text from someone you're interested in. It's no different from refreshing your email, constantly hoping for good news. It's behavioral addiction, and it controls billions of people. The dangerous loner has broken this addiction. They don't post for likes. They don't share for validation. They don't speak for applause. They do things because they believe in them, not because others will approve. This doesn't mean they're cold or uncaring. It doesn't mean they never enjoy praise or appreciation. It means their sense of self-worth doesn't rise and fall based on external validation. They have an internal compass that guides them, regardless of what the crowd thinks. Second, they've learned to sit with discomfort. Most people can't be alone with their thoughts for 5 minutes without reaching for their phone. Why? Because silence reveals who we really are. And most people don't like what they find. Try this experiment right now. Put down your phone. Turn off any music or background noise. Sit in silence for 5 minutes. Just sit. Don't meditate. Don't try to clear your mind. Just be with whatever comes up. Most people will make it about 30 seconds before the discomfort becomes unbearable. Thoughts start flooding in. Anxieties surface. Regrets emerge. Fears bubble up. Questions arise. And the immediate instinct is to grab a distraction, any distraction, to make it stop. And this is why people are constantly plugged in, always with earbuds, always with podcasts, always with music, always with something playing in the background. They're running from themselves, but the dangerous loner has learned to sit in that discomfort. They've had those 3 a.m. conversations with themselves. They've faced their fears, their insecurities, their failures, their demons. They've looked in the mirror, really looked, and accepted what they saw. This doesn't mean they're perfect or have no issues. It means they're not running from their issues. They've integrated their shadow. They've made peace with their imperfections. They've accepted their humanity. And when you're not running from yourself, you stop needing constant distraction. You can sit in a quiet room and be perfectly content. You can take a walk without music. You can eat a meal without scrolling. You can lie in bed without immediately reaching for your phone. This makes you dangerous because you can't be controlled through distraction. You can't be kept docile through entertainment. You can't be made compliant through overstimulation. Third, they can't be manipulated. This is the big one. When you don't need others for validation, you can't be controlled by the threat of rejection. You can't be bought with popularity. You can't be silenced by social pressure. Think about how much social control works through the threat of exclusion. If you don't conform, we'll exclude you. If you don't agree, we'll ostracize you. If you don't comply, we'll cancel you. This only works on people who fear being alone, people who need the group, people whose identity is tied to social acceptance. But someone who's comfortable alone? That threat has no power. You can exclude them. They don't care. You can ostracize them. They're fine with that. You can cancel them. They'll just do their own thing. This makes them ungovernable. And ungovernable people are terrifying to those who want to maintain control. Look at cancel culture, for example. It only works because people fear social death. The threat is, step out of line and we'll make sure nobody wants to associate with you. For someone whose entire identity is wrapped up in social belonging, this is a death sentence. But for someone who doesn't need social belonging, it's meaningless. Cancel away. They'll still wake up tomorrow, completely content with themselves. This isn't about being contrarian or edgy. It's about being free. Free to think what you think. Free to say what you believe. Free to live according to your own values, regardless of whether they're popular. The method of strength through solitude. History shows us that people who practiced powerful solitude had a method. It wasn't random, it was disciplined practice. There's a powerful exercise that wise people throughout history have practiced, the evening review. Every evening, spend time reflecting on your day. Ask yourself questions like, what did I want today that I didn't need? What did I fear that was outside my control? What did I do to seek approval that compromised my values? This isn't just journaling. This is training. You're building psychological muscle. See, when you know yourself deeply, you can't be fooled by the shallow games others play. When you've spent time alone with your thoughts, when you've examined your motivations, when you've faced your shadow, other people's opinions lose their power over you. Their attempts to manipulate you become transparent. You see through the guilt trips. You recognize the emotional blackmail. You spot the social games, and you choose not to play. Think about the last time someone tried to manipulate you. Maybe a family member used guilt. Maybe a friend used obligation. Maybe a coworker used fear. If you're like most people, it probably worked, at least a little bit. But when you practice the evening review, you start seeing these patterns. You notice, oh, this person always uses guilt when they want something from me. This person always plays the victim to get attention. This person always threatens consequences to get compliance. Once you see the pattern, the manipulation stops working. Not because you become cold or heartless, but because you become clear. You see reality as it is, not as others want you to see it. This clarity is power, and power that can't be taken away is the most dangerous kind. Creating your own values. Let's go even deeper. The truly dangerous person is the one who creates their own values instead of inheriting them from society. Most people are walking around with a moral code they never chose. They believe what they believe because their parents believed it, their friends believe it, their culture believes it. They're living someone else's life. But the person who spends time alone starts asking uncomfortable questions. Why do I believe this? Who benefits from me believing this? What would I believe if I had to start from scratch? This is where it gets dangerous. Because once you start thinking for yourself, you stop being predictable. You stop being controllable. You stop being a good little consumer who buys what they're told to buy, votes how they're told to vote, and lives how they're told to live. Let me give you some examples. Society tells you that success means a high-paying career, a big house, an expensive car, and a prestigious title. But when you spend time alone, you might realize that your definition of success is completely different. Maybe it's having time freedom. Maybe it's doing work you find meaningful. Maybe it's living simply and peacefully. Society tells you that you need to be in a relationship to be complete. But when you spend time alone, you might realize that you're perfectly complete by yourself, that a relationship would be a choice, not a necessity, that you can share your life with someone without needing them to complete you. Society tells you that more is always better. More money, more followers, more friends, more stuff. But when you spend time alone, you might realize that less is often more. That simplicity is liberating. That having fewer but deeper connections is more fulfilling than having many shallow ones. These realizations make you dangerous because you're no longer following the program. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. You're not wanting what you're supposed to want. You're not living how you're supposed to live. And when enough people stop following the program breaks down. Modern epidemic, loneliness versus solitude. Here's where we need to get brutally honest about the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is a state of lack. It's the feeling that something is missing, that you're incomplete, that you need others to fill a void inside you. It's painful. It's desperate. It's needy. The lonely person says, "If only I had someone to talk to, I'd be happy. If only I had weekend plans, my life would be better. If only I was in a relationship, I'd feel complete." Notice the pattern? If only, it's always external. Happiness is always out there, somewhere else, in someone else. Never here, never now, never within. Loneliness is what happens when you can't stand your own company. When being alone feels like punishment. When silence feels oppressive. When solitude feels like exile. Our society has created an epidemic of loneliness, despite being more connected than ever. People have hundreds of social media friends, but feel isolated. They're in constant communication, but feel misunderstood. They're never alone, but always lonely. Why? Because they've confused connection with consumption. They think texting is connecting. They think liking posts is relationship. They think being visible online is being known, but real connection requires vulnerability. Real relationship requires depth. Real intimacy requires presence. And none of these things can happen when you're performing for an audience or curating a personal brand. Solitude is a state of wholeness. It's the ability to be complete by yourself, to enjoy your own company, to find peace in silence. It's powerful. It's confident. It's self-sufficient. The solitary person says, "I'm going to spend this weekend alone, and it's going to be perfect. I can be with others or not. Either way, I'm fine. I have a relationship, and it's great. But if it ended tomorrow, I'd still be whole." Notice the difference? There's no neediness, no desperation, no lack, just choice, just freedom, just contentment. Solitude is what happens when you've learned to be your own best company. When being alone feels like coming home. When silence feels restorative. When solitude feels like sanctuary. Why society confuses these two states. Our society has confused these two states because it benefits from the confusion. A lonely person is a consumer. They'll buy products to feel better. They'll seek validation through purchases. They'll stay distracted and compliant. They're profitable. A laptop to stay connected. A phone upgrade to take better selfies. New clothes to get compliments. Dating app subscriptions to find someone. Therapy to fix their loneliness. Self-help books to feel less alone. Events and activities to fill the void. The market loves lonely people. They're always searching, always consuming, always hoping the next purchase will make them feel whole. But a person who enjoys solitude, they're not buying much. They're not seeking validation. They're not distracted. They're thinking. And thinking people are dangerous to systems built on thoughtless compliance. They read instead of scroll. They create instead of consume. They reflect instead of react. They choose instead of conform. They're terrible customers. And in a world built on consumption, being a terrible customer makes you a threat. The 4 pillars of dangerous solitude. After observing both history and human nature, I've identified 4 key principles that make solitude dangerous. First pillar, radical self-honesty. The dangerous loner has learned to be honest with themselves about their motivations, their fears, their desires. They don't lie to themselves to feel better. They face reality head-on. This makes them dangerous because they can spot lies in others. They can see through manipulation. They can't be fooled by pretty words or social performance. Most people lie to themselves constantly. I'm fine. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I'm over it. These are the lies we tell ourselves to avoid uncomfortable truths. But when you spend time in genuine solitude, these lies become impossible to maintain. You see yourself clearly. Your motivations become transparent. Your fears become obvious. Your desires become undeniable. And this clarity extends outward. When you stop lying to yourself, you start noticing when others are lying to you. You see through the facade. You recognize the performance. You spot the inconsistencies. This doesn't make you cynical. It makes you clear. You can still trust, but you trust with open eyes. You can still love, but you love reality, not illusions. You can still connect, but you connect authentically, not superficially. Let me give you an example. Someone at work constantly talks about how much they value honesty and transparency. But you notice they never take responsibility when things go wrong. They always find someone else to blame. They always have an excuse. They always play the victim. Most people don't notice this contradiction because they're not paying attention. They're taking people at their word. They're believing the performance. But someone who practices radical self-honesty, they see it immediately. They recognize it because they've seen it in themselves. They know how self-deception works because they've done the work of becoming honest with themselves. This makes them dangerous because they can't be gaslit. They can't be made to doubt their own perceptions. They know what they see, and they trust themselves. Second pillar, value independence. They've developed their own moral code based on reason and experience, not social pressure or tradition. This doesn't mean they're immoral. Often, they're more moral than the average person, but their morality comes from within, not from outside authority. This makes them dangerous because they can't be controlled by shame or guilt. They do what they believe is right, regardless of what others think. Think about how much social control operates through shame and guilt. Good people don't do that. What will others think? You should be ashamed of yourself. That's not how we do things here. These statements only have power if you've outsourced your moral authority to the group. If good means whatever the group says is good, then the threat of being called bad is terrifying. But if you've developed your own moral code based on careful thought and lived experience, these statements are meaningless. You know what you believe is right. You've thought through your values. You've tested them against reality. You've refined them through experience. Someone might call you selfish for prioritizing your own well-being. But you've thought deeply about this, and you know that you can't pour from an empty cup. That self-care isn't selfish, it's necessary. That you're more helpful to others when you're not depleted. Someone might shame you for not wanting children, but you've examined this carefully, and you know that bringing a child into the world is a monumental responsibility that shouldn't be undertaken just because it's expected. That it's more moral to not have children you don't want than to have children and resent them. Someone might guilt you for setting boundaries with family, but you've learned that boundaries aren't rejection, they're respect. That saying no to what drains you means saying yes to what fulfills you. That loyalty doesn't mean tolerating abuse. When your values come from within, from deep reflection and lived experience, other people's attempts to shame or guilt you lose their power. You're not being defiant or rebellious. You're simply living according to principles you've carefully chosen. This is profoundly dangerous to social control because shame and guilt are the primary tools of conformity. When these tools don't work, the system has no leverage. Third pillar, emotional self-sufficiency. They don't depend on others for their emotional well-being. They've learned to regulate their own emotions, to find peace within themselves, to be their own source of strength. This makes them dangerous because they can't be emotionally manipulated. They don't need your approval, your love, or your acceptance to feel good about themselves. Think about how many relationships are based on emotional dependence. One person needs the other to feel complete. They need reassurance, validation, constant attention. Their mood depends entirely on how the other person treats them. This creates a power dynamic. The person who needs less has more power. The person who can walk away has more leverage. The person who's emotionally self-sufficient can't be controlled. Emotional self-sufficiency doesn't mean you don't have emotions. It doesn't mean you're cold or detached. It means your emotional state isn't dependent on external circumstances or other people's behavior. You can feel sad without spiraling into depression. You can feel angry without losing control. You can feel disappointed without falling apart. You can experience pain without being destroyed by it. More importantly, you don't need others to fix your emotional states. You don't need someone to cheer you up when you're down. You don't need someone to calm you when you're anxious. You don't need someone to validate you when you're insecure. You've learned to sit with your emotions, to understand them, to let them move through you without being controlled by them. You've developed internal resources for emotional regulation. This makes you incredible in relationships because you're choosing to be there, not needing to be there. You're sharing your life, not desperately clinging to another person to feel okay. And it makes you dangerous to those who use emotional manipulation as a control tactic. The silent treatment doesn't work on you. The guilt trip doesn't land. The drama doesn't hook you. You're simply not playing that game. Fourth pillar, intellectual courage. They're willing to think thoughts that others won't think, to question beliefs that others take for granted, to go where the evidence leads even if it's uncomfortable. This makes them dangerous because they can't be silenced by social pressure. They'll speak uncomfortable truths even when it costs them socially. Most people's thinking is constrained by invisible boundaries. There are certain questions you don't ask, certain topics you don't explore, certain conclusions you don't reach. Not because the evidence doesn't point there, but because it's socially unacceptable. These boundaries exist in every domain. In politics, certain positions are beyond the pale. In culture, certain criticisms are forbidden. In relationships, certain truths are unspeakable. In career, certain paths are unthinkable. The intellectually courageous person doesn't respect these boundaries, not because they're trying to be edgy or contrarian, but because they're committed to truth over comfort, reality over social acceptance. They'll ask, what if everything we believe about this is wrong? What if the conventional wisdom is actually harmful? What if the emperor has no clothes and everyone's just pretending not to notice? These questions are dangerous because they threaten consensus reality. If enough people start asking them, the whole house of cards might collapse. Let me give you an example. For years, maybe decades, you've heard that you need to follow your passion in your career. It's repeated everywhere. Graduation speeches, self-help books, motivational posts. But the intellectually courageous person asks, is that actually good advice? What's the evidence? How many people followed their passion and ended up broke and miserable? What if passion follows mastery instead of the other way around? What if this advice is actually harmful to most people? These questions are uncomfortable because they challenge a cherished belief, but they need to be asked. Because if the advice is wrong, millions of people are making life decisions based on a lie. Or consider relationships. Society says you should never go to bed angry. You should always communicate everything. You should work through every problem together. But the intellectually courageous person asks, is that true? What if some things are better left unsaid? What if some space and silence is healthier than constant processing? What if some people are just incompatible and no amount of work will fix it? Again, uncomfortable questions, but necessary ones, because relationships are too important to base on platitudes and conventional wisdom. The intellectually courageous person would rather be right than popular. They'd rather face hard truths than comfortable lies. They'd rather stand alone in reality than together in delusion. And this makes them profoundly dangerous to any system that depends on people believing comfortable lies. The price of being dangerous. Let's not pretend this path is easy. There's a price to pay for this kind of independence. People will misunderstand you. They'll call you antisocial, arrogant, weird, cold, aloof, elitist. They'll try to pathologize your preference for solitude. Your coworkers will say, why don't you ever come to happy hour? What they mean is, your absence makes us question why we're going. Your family will say, "Why aren't you more social?" What they mean is, your differentness highlights our conformity. Your old friends will say, "You've changed, you're not fun anymore." What they mean is, you've grown and we haven't, and that makes us uncomfortable. You'll want to explain, to help them understand, to show them that you're not rejecting them, you're just choosing yourself, that you're not antisocial, you're selectively social, that you're not arrogant, you're just confident. But explanations rarely work, because their discomfort isn't really about you. It's about what you represent. You're a mirror showing them something they don't want to see about themselves. You'll sometimes feel isolated. Not lonely, but isolated. There's a difference. Loneliness is painful emptiness. Isolation is recognizing that most people are operating on a different level of consciousness, and sometimes that creates distance. Your boss complains about office politics while you're pondering existential questions. Your friends discuss celebrity gossip while you're reading philosophy. Your family argues about material success while you're exploring meaning. It's hard to build bridges across that gap. Not impossible, but hard. And sometimes you'll feel isolated, not from people in general, but from people who understand. This doesn't mean you're better than anyone. It just means you're different. You've gone down a path that most people don't even know exists. And that path can be lonely in the true sense. Few fellow travelers. But here's what I've learned. It's better to be isolated in truth than connected through illusion. It's better to have a few deep connections with people who really see you than many superficial connections with people who only know your mask. Quality over quantity, depth over breadth, reality over performance. You lose some relationships. People who are invested in your neediness will be threatened by your independence. Some friends will fade away. Some family members will be uncomfortable with your growth. Why? Because your change forces them to confront their stagnation. Your independence highlights their dependence. Your contentment exposes their discontent. Your freedom reveals their cage. And most people, when confronted with this mirror, don't think maybe I should change too. They think maybe you should change back. They'll try to pull you down. Not maliciously, they probably don't even realize they're doing it, but they'll subtly undermine your growth. They'll dismiss your new interests. They'll mock your practices. They'll tempt you back to old patterns. Just this once, you're being too serious. Remember how we used to be? Don't you miss the old days? What they're really saying is, come back to the level I'm on, because your elevation makes me uncomfortable. And here's the hard truth. Sometimes you have to let people go, not with anger or judgment, but with compassion and acceptance. They're not ready for the path you're on. Maybe they never will be, and that's okay. You can wish them well. You can keep the door open, but you can't shrink yourself to make others comfortable. You can't dim your light to make others feel less dark. You can't go backwards to maintain relationships that only existed at a lower level of consciousness. You'll face pressure to conform. Society will constantly try to pull you back into the herd. There will be subtle and not so subtle pressure to be more social, more normal, more like everyone else. Just come this one time. Everyone will be there. What happened to us? You used to be so much fun. You're taking this too far. You're becoming extreme. You need balance. You're isolating yourself. These statements are designed to make you doubt yourself, to make you feel guilty, to make you question whether you're making the right choices. And sometimes late at night, you will question it. You'll wonder if maybe they're right. Maybe you're taking it too far. Maybe you should be more social. Maybe you're missing out. Maybe you're making a mistake. This is where you need to remember why you started this path. Remember what life was like when you were constantly seeking approval, constantly performing, constantly exhausted by social obligations you didn't want to fulfill. Remember the peace you found in solitude, the clarity you gained from silence, the power you discovered in self-sufficiency. Yes, there's a price to pay, but the price of conformity is higher. The price of conformity is your soul. Why society fears the self-sufficient man. Let's talk about why this threatens people so much. Why does your independence make others so uncomfortable? Economic reasons. Our entire economy is built on people buying things they don't need to impress people they don't like. A self-sufficient person doesn't buy much. They're not good consumers. They don't follow fashion trends. They don't need the latest technology. They don't buy status symbols. They don't make purchases to fill emotional voids. Think about it. Advertising works by creating insecurity. Without this car, you're not successful. Without this cologne, you're not attractive. Without this phone, you're not relevant. Without this degree, you're not educated. Without this body, you're not desirable. But someone who's content with themselves, these messages have no power. They see through the manipulation. They recognize the game. They opt out. This is why minimalism is quietly radical. Not because there's anything inherently virtuous about owning less stuff, but because it represents freedom from the consumption treadmill. And the consumption treadmill is what keeps the economy running. When you're happy with what you have, you don't need what they're selling. When you're content with who you are, you don't need to buy an identity. When you're comfortable alone, you don't need to purchase connection substitutes. You become economically useless to a system built on creating and exploiting dissatisfaction. And that makes you dangerous. Social reasons. Social hierarchies depend on people caring about status. If you don't care about status, you can't be controlled by it. You become unpredictable. Think about how society is structured. There are explicit hierarchies: your job title, your income level, your education credentials. And there are implicit hierarchies: how many followers you have, who your friends are, what neighborhood you live in, where you vacation, what you drive. These hierarchies only have power because people care about them. The CEO only has power because people want to be CEO. The influencer only has influence because people want to be influential. The wealthy only have status because people value wealth. But someone who doesn't care about these hierarchies, they can't be controlled through them. Your boss threatens to fire you. You're not afraid because your identity isn't tied to your job title. The popular crowd excludes you. You don't care because you never wanted to be popular. Society judges your life choices. So what? You're not living for society's approval. This makes you ungovernable through social pressure. And social pressure is the primary tool of conformity. When it doesn't work, the system has no leverage over you. Political reasons. Democratic systems depend on people who can be influenced by popular opinion. If you think for yourself, you become harder to manipulate politically. Propaganda works on crowds, not individuals. It works on people who are plugged into the collective narrative, who get their opinions from the group, who believe what they're supposed to believe. Think about how political messaging works. It's all about creating an us versus them narrative. You're either with us or against us. You're either on the right side of history or the wrong side. You're either progressive or regressive, patriotic or traitorous, enlightened or ignorant. These binaries only work on people who think in tribes, people who need to belong to a group, people whose identity is wrapped up in their political affiliation. But someone who spends time alone, who thinks independently, who's comfortable. Standing outside all tribes, they see through this manipulation immediately. They recognize that most political issues are more complex than the binary allows. They see that both sides often have valid points and serious blind spots. They understand that party loyalty is often just another form of conformity. This doesn't necessarily make them centrist or moderate. They might have strong views, but those views come from careful thought, not tribal allegiance. They might vote, but they're not married to any party. They might have opinions, but they're willing to change them based on evidence. This makes them politically dangerous because they can't be counted on to vote a certain way, to support a certain narrative, to repeat certain talking points. They think for themselves. And in politics, thinking for yourself is the ultimate threat to power. Psychological reasons. Your independence reminds others of their dependence. Your contentment highlights their discontent. Your freedom makes their cage more visible. This is perhaps the deepest reason why your solitude threatens others. You're a walking reminder of what they're not. When you're comfortable alone, it reminds them that they're terrified of being alone. When you don't need constant validation, it reminds them how desperately they seek it. When you live according to your values, it reminds them that they've abandoned theirs. You're a mirror, and most people don't like what they see in mirrors, so they have two options: change themselves or attack the mirror. Guess which one most people choose? They'll criticize you, mock you, dismiss you, pathologize you. Anything to avoid looking at what you're reflecting back to them about their own lives. You're just antisocial. You think you're better than everyone. You're going through a phase. You'll regret this when you're older. You're missing out on life. You're being selfish. None of these are really about you. They're about their discomfort with what you represent, their fear that maybe they're the ones missing out, their anxiety that maybe they've been living wrong, their terror that maybe it's not too late to change, which means they'd have to admit they've wasted years living inauthentically. It's easier to attack you than to face those truths, so they will. And you have to be okay with that. The modern Stoic applying ancient wisdom. So how do you become dangerous in the best possible way? How do you develop the kind of solitude that makes you free rather than isolated? Start with small doses. Begin by spending time alone without distractions. No phone, no music, no podcasts. Just you and your thoughts. Start with 10 minutes. Set a timer. Sit somewhere comfortable but not too comfortable. You don't want to fall asleep. Just sit, breathe, be. The first few times will be torture. Your mind will race. You'll think of 1,000 things you need to do. You'll remember emails you forgot to send. You'll plan tomorrow's tasks. You'll replay yesterday's conversations. You'll itch to check your phone. Don't. Just sit. Watch your thoughts come and go like clouds. Don't try to stop them or control them. Just observe. After a week of 10 minutes, increase to 15. Then 20, then 30. Gradually, you'll get comfortable with silence. You'll stop being afraid of your own mind. This practice is foundational. Everything else builds on. This, because if you can't be alone with yourself for 30 minutes, how can you claim to be self-sufficient? Practice the evening review. Every evening, spend time reflecting on your day. This is different from the silent sitting. This is active examination. Ask yourself, what did I do well today? Be specific. Not I was productive, but I finished that report I'd been putting off, and I did it without distracting myself with social media. What could I improve? Again, specific. Not I need to be better, but I snapped at that coworker because I was stressed, and I could have taken a breath before responding. What did I learn about myself? This is the deep one. I noticed I felt anxious before that meeting, and I realized it's because I care too much about what others think of my ideas. What did I want today that I didn't need? This reveals your attachments. I wanted that person to text me back immediately, but I didn't need it. I was just seeking validation. What did I fear that was outside my control? This reveals where you're wasting energy. I was worried about how my presentation would be received, but I can't control others' reactions, only my preparation. What did I do to seek approval that compromised my values? This is the hard one. I laughed at that joke even though it was mean-spirited, because I didn't want to seem uptight. Write these down every day. Watch patterns emerge over weeks and months. You'll start seeing your triggers, your weak points, your growth edges. This isn't punishment or self-flagellation. It's honest self-assessment. And honest self-assessment is how you grow. Question your beliefs. Regularly examine what you believe and why. Don't accept ideas just because they're popular or traditional. Think for yourself. Make a list. 5 things I strongly believe. Don't overthink it. Just write down 5 core beliefs you hold. Now, for each one, ask, why do I believe this? Be honest. Is it because you've carefully examined evidence and reached this conclusion? Or is it because your parents believed it, your friends believe it, your culture assumes it? It's politically correct. It makes you feel good. Who taught me this? Trace it back. Where did this belief come from? A person? An institution? A book? An experience? Understanding the source helps you evaluate the validity. What evidence supports this? What actual facts or experiences confirm this? Belief? Be specific. Feelings and intuitions don't count as evidence. Could I be wrong? This is the crucial one. If you can't imagine any evidence that would change your mind, you're not holding a belief, you're holding a dogma. And dogmas are prisons. Do this regularly with different beliefs. Political beliefs, religious beliefs, beliefs about relationships, beliefs about success, beliefs about yourself. You'll be surprised how many beliefs you hold that you never chose, that you can't defend, that crumble under honest examination. This doesn't mean abandoning all your beliefs. It means holding them consciously by choice because they've survived your scrutiny. That's much more powerful than holding beliefs by default. Develop your own moral code. Decide what kind of person you want to be based on reason and experience, not social pressure or tradition. Make another list. 5 values that are most important to me. Not values you think you should have, but values you actually have. Honesty, freedom, creativity, family, adventure, peace, justice, growth, whatever resonates deeply. Now ask, am I living according to these values? Look at your actual life, not your aspirations. Look at how you spend your time, how you spend your money, how you treat people, what you prioritize. Where am I falling short? Be brutally honest. If you say you value health, but you eat garbage and never exercise, you're not living your values. If you say you value honesty, but you regularly lie to avoid conflict, you're not living your values. What relationships or situations compromise my values? This is where it gets real. Maybe you have a friend who constantly pressures you to do things that violate your values. Maybe you have a job that requires you to compromise your integrity. Maybe you have family obligations that drain your energy for what matters to you. What needs to change? Once you've identified the misalignments, you have to act. This is where most people stop. They do the reflection, but don't make the hard changes. Don't be most people. End the friendship that's pulling you down. Quit the job that's crushing your soul. Set boundaries with the family member who's draining you. It's not easy, but it's necessary. Living according to your own moral code means making hard choices. It means disappointing some people. It means standing alone sometimes. But it's the only way to live with integrity. Learn to enjoy your own company. Find activities you genuinely enjoy alone. Reading, walking, thinking, creating, writing, drawing, music, meditation, exercise. The key word is genuinely, not activities you think you should enjoy, not activities that seem sophisticated or impressive, activities that actually give you joy or fulfillment when you do them alone. For me, it's reading philosophy and walking in nature. For you, it might be something completely different. Painting, coding, gardening, cooking, working out, playing an instrument. Build a rich inner life, because when your inner world is interesting, you don't need constant external stimulation. When you have deep wells to draw from, you don't need to constantly refill from outside sources. Most people have poverty of inner life. They're not interesting to themselves. They don't have hobbies that truly engage them. They don't have thoughts that fascinate them. They don't have practices that fulfill them. So they need constant entertainment, constant distraction, constant social stimulation, because without it, they're faced with the emptiness inside. But when you've cultivated a rich inner life, being alone is a gift. It's time to pursue what interests you, time to create, time to think, time to grow, time to simply be. Stop seeking validation. This is the hardest one. Stop looking for approval from others. Stop caring about likes, comments, and social status. Find your worth within yourself. Notice how often you're performing for an audience, crafting the perfect post, saying the right thing in a meeting, dressing to impress, sharing accomplishments, hoping for praise, making choices based on what others will think. This is exhausting, and it's a trap, because external validation is an addiction. The more you get, the more you need. You're never satisfied. There's always another like to chase, another compliment to seek, another achievement to share. Break the addiction. Start small. Post something without checking the likes. Share an opinion without needing agreement. Make a choice without seeking approval. Do something for yourself without telling anyone. Notice the discomfort. That's withdrawal. Your addiction is screaming for its fix. Sit with it. Let it be uncomfortable. Don't give in. Over time, you'll find that your sense of worth becomes internal. You'll know what you think of yourself. You'll know your own standards. You'll know when you've done well, regardless of whether anyone else notices or cares. This is freedom, real freedom, not the illusion of freedom that comes from others approving of you, but the actual freedom of not needing their approval at all. The paradox of dangerous solitude. Here's the beautiful irony. The person who doesn't need others becomes the most attractive to others. When you're complete by yourself, when you're not needy or desperate, when you have your own source of strength and peace, that's magnetic. People are drawn to that kind of energy. Think about the most attractive people you know. Not physically attractive, energetically attractive. There's a quality they have, a centeredness, a self-possession, a lack of neediness. They're comfortable in their own skin. They don't try too hard. They don't seek approval. They're just genuinely at ease with themselves, and that ease is incredibly attractive. Why? Because neediness repels and self-sufficiency attracts. When someone needs you for their emotional well-being, it feels like a burden. When someone chooses you because they enjoy you, not because they need you, it feels like a gift. But here's the key. You're not doing it to attract others. You're doing it because it's the right way to live. The attraction is a byproduct, not the goal. If you develop self-sufficiency as a strategy to attract people, it won't work. People can smell inauthenticity. They can sense when you're performing self-sufficiency while secretly desperate for their approval. True self-sufficiency isn't a performance. It's a state of being. You genuinely don't need others. You genuinely enjoy your own company. You genuinely have your own source of strength. And paradoxically, that's when people want to be around you most. Relationships improve when you don't need them. When you choose to be with someone because you want to, not because you need to, the relationship becomes healthier. Think about the worst relationships you've had. Chances are they involved neediness from one or both sides. I need you to make me happy. I need you to give me purpose. I need you to complete me. I need you to validate me. These relationships are suffocating. They're draining. They're unstable. Because they're built on lack, not abundance. But when you don't need the relationship, when you're choosing it freely, everything changes. You can love without clinging. You can commit without losing yourself. You can be vulnerable without being desperate. You can give without expecting return. You can support without enabling. You can receive without feeling obligated. The relationship becomes a dance between two whole people, not a desperate clutching between two halves trying to make a whole. And ironically, these relationships last longer and go deeper than needy ones, because they're built on choice and freedom, not fear and need. Friendships deepen when they're optional. When you're friends with someone because you genuinely enjoy their company, not because you're lonely, the friendship becomes more authentic. How many friendships exist simply out of habit? You've been friends for years, so you keep being friends, even though you don't really connect anymore. You don't really enjoy each other's company. You're just going through the motions. Or how many friendships exist out of convenience? This person lives nearby. This person works with you. This person is in your social circle. So, you're friends, even though you wouldn't choose them if circumstances were different. Or how many friendships exist out of fear? Fear of being alone. Fear of being seen as a loser with no friends. Fear of missing out on social opportunities. But when you're comfortable alone, when you don't need friends to feel okay, you can be much more selective. You can have fewer friends, but deeper friendships. You can spend time with people who genuinely add to your life, not people who drain you. You can let go of friendships that have run their course without guilt or fear. Quality over quantity. Depth over breadth. Authenticity over performance. And the friendships you do maintain become incredibly valuable, because both people know they're choosing to be there. Neither is there out of loneliness or need. You're there because you genuinely value each other. Work becomes more fulfilling when you're not desperate for approval. When you're not desperate for approval from your boss or colleagues, you can focus on doing good work for its own sake. Most people at work are playing politics, trying to impress the right people, taking credit for others' work, avoiding blame when things go wrong, saying what people want to hear, putting on a show. This is exhausting, and it's ultimately unfulfilling, because even when you succeed, you know it's not really you succeeding, it's your performance succeeding. But when you don't need approval, when you're secure in your own sense of competence and worth, you can focus on the actual work. You can propose the idea you think is best, not the idea that will be most popular. You can give honest feedback, not feedback designed to make you look good. You can admit mistakes, not cover them up. You can do excellent work for the satisfaction of excellence, not for the praise. And ironically, this often leads to more success, because authenticity and competence shine through. People can sense when someone is performing versus when someone is genuinely excellent at what they do. But even if it doesn't lead to more conventional success, more promotions, more money, more recognition, it leads to something more valuable: fulfillment. The satisfaction of knowing you're doing work that matters to you in a way that's aligned with your values. Life becomes more meaningful when you're not constantly seeking validation. When you're not constantly seeking external validation, you can focus on what actually matters to you. Most people are living someone else's life, pursuing someone else's goals, following someone else's definition of success, seeking someone else's approval. Their parents wanted them to be a doctor, so they're a doctor, even though they hate it. Society says success means a big house and a fancy car, so they're drowning in debt to maintain appearances. Their peer group values partying and socialness, so they're out every weekend even though they'd rather be home reading. They're performers in someone else's play. And no matter how well they perform, it feels empty, because it's not their play. But when you stop seeking external validation, when you turn inward and ask, what do I actually want? What actually matters to me? What would make my life meaningful? And then you can start living authentically. Maybe meaningful to you means creating art that nobody sees. Maybe it means living simply in a small town. Maybe it means working a job that doesn't pay much but serves others. Maybe it means traveling the world with no fixed address. Maybe it means dedicating yourself to a cause. Whatever it is, it's yours. Not borrowed from parents or society or peers, yours. And when you live your own life according to your own values, pursuing your own vision of meaning, that's when life becomes deeply fulfilling. Not because you're achieving conventional success or getting applause from others, but because you're being true to yourself. And that's worth more than all the validation in the world, the call to dangerous living. So here's my challenge to you. Become dangerous. Not dangerous in the sense of hurting others, dangerous in the sense of being impossible to control. Dangerous in the sense of thinking for yourself. Dangerous in the sense of being complete by yourself. Dangerous in the sense of having your own values, your own moral code, your own source of strength. The world needs more people who can't be bought, can't be manipulated, can't be silenced. The world needs more people who are comfortable in their own skin, who don't need constant validation, who can sit with their thoughts without needing to escape. The world needs more people who are dangerous. But how do you start? You start today, right now. Not tomorrow, not next week. Not when circumstances are perfect. Now, today. Put down your phone and sit in silence for 10 minutes. Don't meditate. Don't try to clear your mind. Just be with whatever comes up. Be uncomfortable. Don't run. Just sit. This evening, do your evening review. Ask yourself those hard questions about today. Write down honest answers. See what you discover about yourself. This week, question one belief you've been carrying. Ask why you believe it. Who taught it to you? What evidence supports it? Whether you could be wrong. Be honest with yourself. This month, evaluate one. Relationship. Is it real or just habit? Does it elevate you or drain you? Is it based on quality or just quantity? Be willing to make changes if needed. This year, set one big goal. Become less dependent on others' approval. Need less external validation. Become more self-sufficient. Measure your progress not by external achievements, but by internal peace. It won't be easy. Sometimes you'll feel isolated. Sometimes you'll be misunderstood. Sometimes you'll question yourself. But I promise, you'll be free. You'll be authentic. You'll be yourself. And in a world full of people desperate to fit in, the most radical act is learning to stand alone. The final truth: society fears your power. Here's what they don't tell you. Society doesn't fear your weakness. Society fears your power. The weak man is easy, controllable, predictable, manageable. Tell him what to want. He wants it. Tell him what to think. He thinks it. Tell him how to live. He lives it. He's a perfect cog in the machine. He goes to work, pays his taxes, buys products, seeks approval, follows rules, and never questions why. He's exactly what the system needs to keep running. But the strong man, the self-sufficient man, The dangerous man? He's uncontrollable, unpredictable, unmanageable. You can't tell him what to want. He knows what he wants. You can't tell him what to think. He thinks for himself. You can't tell him how to live. He lives on his own terms. He's a wrench in the machine, and the machine doesn't like wrenches. So the machine tries to fix him, to normalize him, to bring him back into line through shame, guilt, social pressure, economic incentives, whatever works. You're being too extreme. You need balance. You're isolating yourself. You're missing out. You'll regret this. You need to think about your future. What will people think? You're throwing your life away. These are all attempts to get you back in line, to make you doubt yourself, to make you conform. But here's the beautiful secret. The system needs you more than you need the system. The system's power comes from your compliance, your labor, your consumption, your attention, your belief, and you can withdraw it any time you want. Stop buying their products. Stop seeking their approval. Stop playing their games. Be self-sufficient. Think for yourself. Live your own way. This is real freedom. This is real power. This is real danger. Not danger to others. Danger to control systems. Danger to manipulation. Danger to the status quo. The kind of danger the world desperately needs more of. Practical steps. The 30-day challenge to becoming dangerous. If you really want to change, here's a 30-day challenge. Week 1, silence. Every day, spend 15 minutes alone without distractions. No phone, no music, no people, just you and your thoughts. The first few days will be awful. Your mind will race, you'll fidget. You'll want to escape. Don't. By day 7, you'll notice something shift. The anxiety will decrease. The thoughts will slow. You'll start to actually enjoy the silence. Week 2, questioning. Every day, question one belief. Why do I believe this? Who taught me? Where's the evidence? Could I be wrong? Ask uncomfortable questions. Accept uncomfortable answers. Let your thinking evolve. By day 14, you'll realize how many beliefs you hold that you never consciously chose. How many ideas you've inherited without examination. How much of your thinking isn't really yours. Week 3, boundaries. Every day, set one boundary. Say no to someone. Decline a social event. Refuse an inappropriate request. You'll feel guilty. You'll feel selfish. You'll feel bad. Do it anyway. Because boundaries aren't lack of love. Boundaries are self-respect. By day 21, you'll notice something interesting. The people who respect your boundaries stay. The people who don't reveal themselves. And your life becomes significantly more peaceful. Week 4, creation. Every day, create something just for you. Write a page. Draw a picture. Compose a song. Code something. Doesn't matter what. Matters why. Not for approval. Not for likes. Not for others. For expression. For pleasure. For yourself. By day 30, you'll have created something entirely yours. Something that exists because you made it, not because someone asked for it or paid for it or validated it. And you'll realize this is what freedom feels like. After 30 days, you'll be different, stronger, freer, more dangerous. Not completely transformed, that takes longer, but changed enough to see the path clearly. Changed enough to know it's possible. Changed enough to want to keep going. The final word, You're already dangerous. Here's the final truth I'm going to tell you. You're already dangerous. You just forgot. When you were a child, you didn't care about social approval. You knew what you liked. You knew what you believed. You knew who you were. Then the world shaped you. Fit in, be normal. Be like everyone else, and gradually you forgot. You forgot how to think for yourself. You forgot how to be alone. You forgot how to create your own values. But deep down, it's still there. You're still dangerous. You're still free. And this video, this is just a reminder. You can't be controlled. You can't be manipulated. You can't be silenced. You just forgot. But now you're remembering. And when you remember, everything changes. The cage was always unlocked. You just didn't know you could walk out. But now you know. So what are you going to do about it? Are you going to stay in the cage because it's comfortable? Because it's what you know? Because leaving would disappoint people? Or are you going to walk out? Even though it's scary? Even though you'll be alone at first? Even though people will call you crazy? The choice is yours. It's always been yours. You just didn't realize you had one, but you do. And what you choose in this moment will determine the rest of your life. Choose the cage, and you'll be comfortable, safe, accepted, and slowly suffocated by a life that was never really yours. Choose freedom, and you'll be dangerous, misunderstood, sometimes alone, and finally truly alive. Closing. If this hit you in the chest like it did me when I first understood it, I need you to do me a favor. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. You know who they are. The friend who's trapped in people-pleasing. The family member who's living someone else's dream. The colleague who's dying inside from conformity. Because the algorithm needs to know that content like this matters. That there are people out there who want truth over comfort, who want freedom over approval, who want authenticity over performance. Drop a comment and tell me, what's one belief you've been carrying that you never chose for yourself? What's one area where you've been seeking validation instead of developing self-respect? And remember, in a world full of people desperate to fit in, the most radical act is learning to stand alone. Stay dangerous, my friends.